What happens when someone at the very top of a government suddenly decides to leave, right in the middle of a national emergency, and nobody can clearly explain why? That's the question people inside Iran are asking right now, because a senior Iranian official has resigned, not after a period of stability, not after a successful reform, but during war, during economic collapse, during the most severe pressure the Islamic Republic has faced in decades. Officials insist it was a personal decision, nothing unusual, nothing to worry about. But history tells us something different. People rarely abandon power when everything is fine. They leave when they believe something larger is coming, something they no longer want their name attached to. And that's why this story matters. Because it may not be about one resignation at all. It may be about an entire system reaching its breaking point. To understand why, we first need to understand how Iran actually works. On paper, Iran has a government that looks familiar. A president, ministers, diplomats, cabinet officials. These are the people who appear on television, negotiate agreements, and represent the country internationally. But behind that visible structure sits another center of power, one with military uniforms, one with intelligence networks, one with enormous economic influence. The Revolutionary Guard. Over the years, the IRGC has become much more than a military organization. It controls major industries. It oversees strategic weapons programs. It possesses financial resources and security capabilities that rival the civilian government itself. For decades, these two power centers coexisted because there was someone above them, someone who could settle disputes, someone whose authority neither side openly challenged, the supreme leader. He served as the final referee inside the system. But reports increasingly suggest that this balancing mechanism isn't functioning the way it once did. And when the referee begins to disappear, competition between power centers becomes far more dangerous. The resignation we opened with may be the first visible sign of that problem. Because systems often crack internally long before those fractures become visible from the outside. Now let's move away from politics for a moment. Because ordinary Iranians are dealing with something much more immediate. Daily survival. Iran's economy depends heavily on revenues. Oil isn't simply another export. It's the financial engine supporting everything else. But Iran faces a major challenge. It lacks enough refining capacity to fully satisfy domestic demand. Its economic model depends on selling oil abroad and using that revenue to keep essential systems operating. That cycle is under enormous pressure. Oil exports have declined. Revenue streams have been disrupted. Access to financial networks has become increasingly difficult. And the consequences are showing up everywhere. Imagine living in one of the world's largest energy-producing countries, and still worrying about fuel shortages. Imagine watching inflation rise while your savings lose value. Imagine seeing increase month after month while opportunities disappear. This isn't an abstract economic discussion. It's daily reality for millions of people. And energy infrastructure presents another problem. When production remains disrupted for long periods, damage can become permanent. Pressure inside oil fields changes. Facilities deteriorate. Some lost output never fully returns. That means every month of disruption isn't only affecting today's economy. It's potentially reducing tomorrow's as well. Now think about the people responsible for enforcing order. Police officers, security personnel, intelligence officials, judges. They're experiencing many of the same economic pressures. They also buy groceries. They also pay rent. They also stand in traffic and worry about their families. History shows something remarkably consistent. When economic pain begins affecting both the rulers and the people being ruled, loyalty becomes more difficult to maintain. Not because everyone suddenly changes their beliefs, but because practical realities begin overwhelming political narratives. Systems built on rewards and stability become vulnerable when they can no longer provide either. And that creates another problem. The Iranian military establishment increasingly appears trapped by its own strategy. Its influence has long been justified by external threats. Resistance, confrontation, national defense. But prolonged confrontation also carries enormous economic costs. Every escalation increases pressure on the very economy supporting the state. Backing down risks looking weak. Escalating further risks making the crisis worse. It's a difficult position with no easy exit. And that pressure is increasingly visible on the streets. For decades, the government promoted a simple message. Whatever hardships exist, foreign enemies are responsible. Sanctions, outside interference, international conspiracies. For many years, that explanation retained considerable power, but economic hardship changes public psychology. Eventually, people begin asking different questions. Why are basic services deteriorating? Why is everyday life becoming harder? Why do sacrifices seem endless? Once those questions begin spreading openly, they're difficult to contain. Fear starts losing its effectiveness. And when fear loses effectiveness, political systems enter dangerous territory. Because people who believe they have little left to lose often behave differently than those who still think things might improve. This brings us back to the missing referee. The supreme leader's importance was never merely symbolic. He could restrain the military. He could authorize negotiations. He could balance competing interests. But if his ability to perform that role has weakened, then decision-making becomes fragmented. And fragmented systems often make poor decisions, because leaders increasingly focus on immediate survival rather than long-term stability. That may explain the resignation. Perhaps someone inside the system simply concluded that remaining in place had become too risky. Now let's zoom out even further. Because Iran's problems don't remain inside Iran. They have global consequences. One reason is geography. Near Iran sits one of the world's most important waterways, the Strait of Hormuz. Roughly 1/5 of globally traded oil passes through this narrow channel. That means disruptions there don't only affect the Middle East. They affect energy prices everywhere. Fuel costs, transportation expenses, inflation, food prices. The entire global economy pays attention. Iran understands this leverage extremely well. The possibility of disrupting Hormuz has long served as a strategic pressure point. It's a message to the world. If conditions worsen for us, the consequences won't stop at our borders. But that strategy contains risks, because leverage can become isolation. Countries become cautious about supporting a government perceived as willing to threaten global energy security. And the economic consequences spread quickly. Higher energy costs increase manufacturing expenses. Shipping becomes more expensive. Central banks face inflationary pressures. Financial markets grow nervous. What appears at first to be a regional crisis begins affecting consumers thousands of miles away. History offers several examples. In the 1972 oil shocks triggered waves of inflation that lasted years. Economic disruptions spread across continents. Governments faced difficult choices. Growth slowed. Living costs increased. Confidence weakened. Another lesson comes from states experiencing prolonged internal strain. Economic crises often do not produce immediate political transformation. Instead, they create periods of uncertainty, power struggles, institutional fragmentation, unexpected outcomes. And that brings us to the question everyone is asking: what happens next? There are three broad possibilities. The first is escalation. Economic pressure intensifies. Political tensions rise. Security forces respond more aggressively. The military consolidates even greater influence. In this scenario, instability increases before any resolution becomes possible. The second possibility is gradual adjustment. Some officials quietly distance themselves. Certain factions begin searching for compromise. Economic necessity pushes parts of the system toward reform. This path would still be difficult, but it offers a chance for controlled change rather than sudden disruption. The third possibility is the most unpredictable: a larger external shock, a major energy crisis, a financial emergency, or a political event that forces all sides into decisions they were previously unwilling to make. History often turns on unexpected moments, and systems under severe pressure are especially vulnerable to surprises. So where does that leave Iran? One thing already seems clear. The resignation that began this story is probably not the entire story. It's a signal, a reminder that even systems that appear solid on the outside can be struggling internally. Throughout history, political structures have often looked strongest right before important changes began, because the people closest to power frequently recognize problems long before everyone else does. The people of Iran are living through extraordinary uncertainty. They didn't create most of these pressures, but they are the ones carrying their costs every single day. And ultimately, mathematics tends to be unforgiving. Governments need revenue. Institutions need resources. Security systems need incentives. When those foundations weaken for long enough, something eventually changes. The only question is what that change looks like. Will the system adapt? Will it harden? Will it fragment? Right now, nobody can answer with certainty. But one thing seems increasingly difficult to ignore. When people inside a system start quietly walking away, it often means they can feel something shifting beneath their feet. And history suggests that those moments rarely stay hidden forever.